Good evening and welcome to another edition of Down to the Wire. And joining me again this week is Capping with Candace. Candace here as we get ready for the Kentucky Oaks, the Kentucky Derby, and the Woodford Reserve. We're going to talk about all three of those races, kind of construct some basic pick three and Oaks Derby double wagers, and kind of just make our final selections and hopefully give you a few hinters to maybe include some horses or maybe take a second look at some horses. Again, we always recommend going with your own picks and kind of just gathering the information and making your final selections. So Candace, first off, we had our big roundtable last week with the Oaks, and since then nobody really kind of got injured or anything. So pretty much the field we talked about last week is intact.
Yeah, they really are, which is a nice thing to see. I think the last couple of years in the Oaks, we've had a couple smaller fields. In the Derby, we've had some injuries late, so it's good to see everybody intact and the field kind of formulate the way that you expected it to from several weeks out.
The morning line favorite is Rachel's Valentina. A lot of people are talking about Lewis Bay being a chance, and then you've got Catherine Sophia. Kind of how do you shake out those big three?
For me, Rachel's Valentina isn't one that I plan on using. I just think that of the shorter prices that she maybe is the most vulnerable, and to some extent maybe that's silly to say because she's never finished worse than second, but I did think that in the Ashland in particular that she did have an easier trip than say a Catherine Sophia. To me, Catherine Sophia really had to put in an extended drive when she was pressured very early, and I think that it really showed itself late. Rachel's Valentina ran a very nice race, don't get me wrong, but she didn't quite have to deal with that to the extent that Catherine Sophia did. So it's really hard to compare the two of their performances in there. And I also think just Rachel's Valentina's running style to me is one where breaking from the 11 post is going to be a lot more troublesome. I mean, obviously Lewis Bay has an inside post. I think Landover Sea is a little bit more tactically versatile, and Catherine Sophia has a lot of legitimate early speed. So Rachel's Valentina will actually be interesting to see where they kind of place her early on, because I wonder if they have to try to go to the lead with her, and if they do, I'm a little curious as to whether or not she's actually fast enough to pull that off. So I don't know. I think there's plenty of reasons to oppose Rachel's Valentina on the win front at a short price.
Kind of another tricky post for Terra Promessa. She got stuck with the one hole, and that may not be the ideal spot to be either for somebody with her kind of speed.
Yeah, probably not, because she is pretty tractable, and the problem with the one post is sometimes you have to kind of go. You have to make sure you get out and get some position there. So yeah, she could find herself in a little bit of a tricky spot, or maybe end up having to go fast early than they would have liked to, just to ensure that she gets the positioning they're looking for. So yeah, one is not one you'd want for her. Typically, if you draw the one post, you're hoping it's with a horse who either has a lot of early speed or none of it.
All right, well then who's your selection, and then who are some others you're going to maybe toss in on a few tickets?
Well, I'm going to use four. Like, we're talking about this pick three in here. So in my pick three, I will use four: Landover Sea, Catherine Sophia, Dream Dance, and Venus Valentine. My top choice is Landover Sea. I've liked her for a while now. I thought that she ran extremely well against Songbird and the Santa Isabel when I was there. I thought that was a very nice run. She is one who is versatile. She can show some speed if she wants to in the beginning. I mean, there's a few races where she wasn't terribly far off of Songbird at the first call, which is a good barometer as far as how much early speed you have. But they can pull her back as well, and I don't know, my gut kind of tells me that they're going to try to just pull her back, because you have Catherine Sophia and Rachel's Valentina immediately to your inside, both of whom have speed, and I'm fine with that. So I think Landover Sea's been training fantastically into this race from what I've seen, and she has plenty of talent. So I'm going to pick her on top. Like I said, I use Catherine Sophia. I don't buy this junk that she didn't stay in the Ashland. It's a 16th of a mile further than when she was winning by 7. And I get it was 2 turns, but I don't buy that you, in a 16th of a mile, you go from being one of the top fillies in this group to being just trash. And I also really strongly wonder if on that Ashland card that there wasn't a strong closer's bias that nobody's really talking about because the feature race of the day was the Bluegrass Stakes, which people inherently expected to collapse. So I don't know. I think closers had their own way that day, to be honest. So I think that there are plenty of reasons to kind of upgrade Catherine Sophia's performance in there. Like I said, she was put under a drive very early, which is always tough to kind of deal with. So I'll have her in here as well. And then the other two I'm going to use are Venus Valentine and Dream Dance for the sole purpose that there is speed in here. It is drawn outside. There is reason to believe this race could collapse. And if it did, I want a couple closers who are going to be big prices, and that's the two of them. So Landover C, Catherine Sophia, Venus Valentine, Dream Dance. This is a tough race, and I'm using 4, and I feel like you could easily use 6 or 7 in here, but I'm going to try to keep it to 4.
Yeah, I think you got to take a stand somewhere, and you got to try to scope out a few price horses, and yet, you know, you can still defensively use Catherine Sophia, and really the only stand you're taking is just you're going to maybe throw out Rachel's Valentina. So you're still taking a stand, but you're also giving yourself a chance to catch one of these other horses. I'm kind of doing the same thing. I'm doing the opposite. I'm taking a stand on Catherine Sophia. My top selection is Taxable. I'm not a big fan of that post position, but St. John's River and a few other horses have ran well from the outside in the past, and I just think Taxable truly was one race short. I love her 6-length win last fall at Churchill Downs. I just thought she would have kept a straight line last time. I think she would have beat Terra Promessa. So I think maybe she can sit as long as she breaks well. You know, I think she can sit in that second flight. And so I'm going with Taxable on top. She's 20-1 in the morning line. I think she'll be all of that. I'm going to use Rachel very lightly. I'm not a big fan of her in the spot too, mainly just because I just think she's going to regress off that hard effort the last time. I do think the track was biased that day, and nobody's really talking about it because I think a lot of people questioned whether Catherine Sophia wanted the distance, and everybody wanted Brody's to win, so they're kind of just ignoring what happened the rest of the
Exactly. I agree completely on that.
Yeah, you know, so like they wanted Brody to win, and he won, and he got the collapse, and they're not.
It's almost like a confirmation bias type of a thing.
Confirmation bias, and I think the horse that actually you downgrade from the trip is Weep No More.
Yes.
And I think she got the best of the trip of those 3. So I'm not playing her at all. I do like Royal Obsession's race against Lewis Bay. I just thought that was one of those tricky races. I mean, she had the wide trip 2 races back, and then last time she had slop, but she was wide. She got a lot of mud kicked in her face that day. I don't think she's that fast of a horse, but to me, I think if I want somebody with dirtied up form, literally she's got it. She's got a mud race and then a wide trip. So I think Royal Obsession is kind of my horse that's going to be goofily played in trifectas and superfectas, and I'll throw her in a couple of daily doubles. And so I'm basically going to go with Landover C, Royal Obsession, Terra Promessa, and Taxable, my top selection, and kind of just use those 4 and mainly use Taxable and Royal Obsession. And like I said, I might play 1 or 2 tickets with Rachel's Valentina, but I'm not really a fan of her either. As if she wins, I guess I'll just not hit those bets and not really worry about it, I guess. I like you say, I could go 5 or 6 more and then still feel like I'm tossing somebody. So I think it's a tricky race. I think we'll have, you know, we'll kind of see who is the best of these horses that are been chasing Songbird, and I think it's a good matchup between Catherine Sophia, and if Rachel brings her A game, and then if you get Landover C, I think it should be a good competitive race.
Oh, absolutely. But I do think in this pick 3 sequence that, you know, if you have the budget to do it, this is the race to spread of all of them. And it's maybe a little counterintuitive because, you know, I always hear people say, I've heard a lot of people say, oh, well, I really spread in the Woodford Reserve, or you think, oh, the Derby's 20 horses. But to me, of the 3 races, this is the race that you'll get more bang for your buck for spreading, because I do think you have the biggest chance of getting, you know, some healthy prices in this race, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think the tote board is going to reflect win odds, but again, I'm not so sure it's going to reflect daily double and pick 3 odds. Meaning, like, I think a horse might be 8-1, and they might be more like 14-1 in the double or pick 3.
Yes.
So I think it's one of those races where some people will spread, and I just don't see anybody really hammering a couple of horses. So it's one of those races where if you want to go deeper, you'll still get value and a price. Some of those 6, 7 to 1s, maybe more like 10 or 11 to 1 in the pick threes and doubles. So you kind of got to, like I say, I think it's somewhere along the line you got to take a stand. If you're just going to sit there and take, I mean, to me, I wouldn't take, if you're going to take all 3 of the favorites, Lewis, Bay, Rachel, and Catherine, then you're probably just better off just taking those 3.
Yeah,
I mean,
because and you have to be careful too, because I mean, if you have to be careful because it's depending on who you're using later as well, right? So you wouldn't want to like take Rachel's Valentina, Catherine, Sophia, Landover, C, and then say, okay, I'm going to use them with Big Blue Kitten and Nyquist. Like you want to keep your options open. And that you have to remember this is a pick 3. So if you're hitting 3 races in a row, you want to be getting paid for that. So you want to remove those combinations that would be paying 3 to 1 and hopefully have the combinations that are going to pay you a lot more for your buck, because pick 3s aren't easy to hit. So if you're hitting a pick 3 and you're getting 3 to 1 on it, well, you would have been easier just betting Nyquist to win the Derby. So
yeah, because he may go off at 7 to 2. So, and the same thing with the winner of the first leg. Like if all of a sudden, Catherine wins, let's say if you really like her, or if you really like Rachel and she goes off at 7 to 2, 4 to 1, well, then you're better off just playing them to win, and then doubling down on the Derby if you want to, I guess. So I do think you got to play it structure. Like I say, give yourself a chance to win. That's what I'm saying. Give yourself so that if you're sitting there and you're like, if this happens and this happens, I can win $1,000. I mean, don't sit there and say like, if this happens and that happens and that happens, I win 50. I mean, to me, you can do that the other 364 days a year, and there's really not much glory in that. So give yourself a chance to win. Buy a couple of tickets that'll pay 4 figures anyways. Like I say, you can't guarantee that you're going to win, but at least you'll have a chance to win some money if you do. The Woodford Reserve is on the turf. It's run immediately before the Derby, but remember, that's a full hour before the Derby, or almost 60 to 65 minutes. Full field, and there's some horses in here that I didn't expect, and boy, this is like if you were to line up all of the older turf division, these are the horses we'll probably be watching most of the summer, I would imagine.
Oh, they really are, and this is a race I'm very excited about because pretty much everybody I like in here for the most part is a price, and so that's where, like we were saying, when you're playing these pick 3s and you want to make sure you have those combinations where you're going to get paid. For me personally, this is the leg that would be key to me on that front, because I don't love the short prices, that being Slumber, that being Big Blue Kitten. I tend to always think that 9 is a little bit on the short side for them. They're more 10 furlong plus horses, and these are 2 horses who obviously have bigger things to do this year, and I mean that's the case for a few of these, but some of these are more your kind of high allowance G3 types. And in some of these earlier season races, they're the ones who I often tend to side with because most of them have ran this year. So they have a little bit of a fitness edge. And, most of them are trying to kind of bolster their way up through the ranks by winning a race like this, and just might be a little bit more well-meant. Plus, Big Blue Kitten and Slumber, as consistent as they are in running, they aren't consistent winners either. So, even if you could say, well, I expect both of them to run well, expecting either of them to win is a completely different story. So I'm against the 2 of them in here. I ended up using 4. Again, in this spot, I like the number 3 Bolo. He obviously showed a ton of talent as a 3-year-old, especially on the turf, but they tried him on the dirt and tried the Derby, and that didn't work out. But they put him back on the turf since, and I thought for the most part, he's been fantastic this year. Even his loss in the Frank Kilroy Mile, I thought that he ran a good race. I just thought the tactics in there were bizarre. Pulling him back as far as they did is not his usual style, but he has plenty of talent, and 9 furlongs is no issue for him at all. So I would use him. I would also use Reporting Star, who won the Appleton at Gulfstream Park, and we know Gulfstream turf form from that time of the year tends to really hold form throughout the year, because you get some very strong races in there. That he ran quite well to win that race, and He's capable at this distance, true. He's not as consistent as some of the others, but he does throw in a nice race every now and then, and he'll be a good enough price in here, especially for a horse who just won last time out. I'll use World Approval in here. This is another one who I thought as a 3-year-old showed a lot of potential. The Cassie barn is absolutely red hot right now when they're winning everything. And so if you get, I don't know if we'll get 20 to 1 on him. That's the morning line price because of that. But if he's any sort of double digits, World Approval is a big play in here just because of that barn is so in form right now. And I thought he ran very well last time out as well at the fairgrounds. And then the last one I would use in here is the Argentinian horse, Kasaki. Again, another horse who won last time, won an allowance at Keeneland, but one who has potential, pretty lightly raced in America, and for the most part has run well. So those are the 4 I'm going to use in here: Bolo, Reporting Star, World Approval, Kasaki, and I'm just pretty much against the two favorites in here, that being Slumber and Big Blue Kitten. I expect them both to run fine. That's what they do, but they're both extremely difficult to win with for the prices that they're going to be in this sort of a race.
Yeah, I find it hard to believe they're going to be 5 to 2 and 3 to 1, coming off layoffs, being 8 years old. So I think they're going to drift up to 4 to 1. I still think they'll be the 2 favorites because I don't think you're going to get 50 to 1 in Kasaki, and some of these this morning. Divisadero is not going to be 15 to 1. I just think the morning line is.
I think Divisadero is going to be like half the price that he is on the morning line.
Yeah, and I think the mistake was made here was just Slumber and Big Blue Kitten are low.
Mm-hmm.
So then he had to adjust all the other ones, and no, they'll be the favorites, but they'll probably both be 5 to 1. And then when you adjust them to 5 to 1, that makes Divisadero more like 9 to 1. Tourist will probably be 8 to 1, 9 to 1. Bolo's going to be 7, 8 to 1. I think the rest of the line kind of shakes out right. It is unusual that Kasaki is 50 to 1, and I don't think he's going to be that either. The way he laid out the line, it kind of had to be that high if you're going to put those first 2 so low. I just don't think they're going to be that. I totally agree. I just can't use Big Blue Kitten and Slumber. Slumber, you just know he needs a race.
Yes.
But you also know he's going to run well. He's going to be sitting there, and he's going to come closing, and everybody's going to say, oh, he'd have had him. And that doesn't help you in a pick 3. It may help you cash exactas and double or trifectas and stuff, but I can't take either one of those 2 horses. I have to have Bolo just because I think I'm just going to play the raw talent. Traditionally, California horses have not done well in this race. It's just a fact, but I think you're going to get rewarded with at least 10 to 1 on them. So you got to throw him in there. I was very impressed with Reporting Star the last time. So I'm going to toss him in there. Triple Threat is always in the hunt to me. Divisadero is always in the hunt. So I'm going to use both of those, and then Tourist. So I'm going to use 5. I do just have to go deeper, and it's one of those things. If the 2 favorites win, I won't be upset. But if any one of these other long shots that I like Triple Threat and Divisadero, I want to have them in there. So I'm going to go with 5. Bolo is my top selection, but I really was impressed with Reporting Star the last time, and in the back of my mind, Divisadero, he's had some strange trips. Last time he had an early run going wide into the turn. I'm not sure how good he really is, but I think the last race doesn't really show his talent either. So I think at 15 to, like you say, it'll probably be more like 9 to 1, but who knows? Maybe if people look at the morning line when they play their tickets, he may be 15 to 1 in the pick 3 2-day wager.
Yeah, I have a tough time trying to think how this race is going to shake out as far as in the pick 3s. My gut tells me, and correct me if I'm wrong or if you agree, my gut tells me the horse in the pick 3s who's going to get played in this race is going to be Bolo. I think he's the one who's going to come out shorter than what you think it will be compared to what he is on the win front. But that's just my thought.
Yeah, I agree. I think Bolo is one of those horses that's going to be used on every ticket.
Mm-hmm.
The thing of it is, he could still be 10 to 1, but he's going to be on every ticket. And I kind of have that sneaky feeling about Tourist. He's going to be on every ticket. He may still go off at 10 or 11 to 1, but he's going to be on every ticket.
Yeah.
So, because I do think this is the spread race. I think the real hardcore people are not keying Big Blue Kitten and Slumber.
No.
So but I also think I mean, you've got Divisadero, you've got Triple Threat, you've got Tourist. These horses are always bet. World Approval, there's nothing wrong with him. I
No.
mean, I could go 6 deep and include him. I could throw Danish Dynaformer in. I mean, there's nothing wrong with him.
Yeah. No. No. I mean, this is the race to get your price for sure. I think, like you say, this is a race where I have zero problem tossing Slumber, Big Blue Kitten. If one of them beats me, great, good for them. I won't feel terrible about it. But this is the race to catch a price. And even though, like I said, I'll use a horse like a Bolo, I think he's the one who, if even though you're using him, you're kind of hoping it goes a different way because, it's reminiscent to me of, a couple years ago when Palace Mouse won the Belmont. On the win front, he was a decent price. He wasn't the favorite, but he was that horse who, on everybody's pick fours, everybody had him.
Yep, he was like second lowest in the pick threes and second lowest in the pick fours, and he was like the fifth or sixth favorite on the board.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I think Bolo will be in this race.
Yeah. Now, the interesting thing is these odds get so, I mean, because all three races have full fields, it's one of those things where, I mean, even though I won't have the ticket, you could kind of see like all of a sudden if you got like a 10-1 in the Oaks and then you get a 10-1 in Bolo and then Nyquist loses, this thing, like those people that are, I mean, this is one where the really sophisticated, if you really want to dig down into it, like you could still get a decent payoff. It's just I won't have it because I can't plan out that many tickets and I want to try to make more of a score. But this is one of those things where you could almost just grind your way into a profit, I think, literally by just playing enough combinations almost.
No, you really could. And, again, it's just, I think I'd say, again, just always be mindful of who you're using and what combinations you're presenting yourself. If you used Rachel's Valentina in the first and you plan to use Nyquist in the last, then, go price hunting in here a little bit. I wouldn't say don't use, Rachel's Valentina and then Big Blue Kitten and then Nyquist and then you're using, 4 horses on each leg. Now you're getting yourself into deep waters that you don't want to do. So, pick a race to take a stand. I think for us both, it seems to really be this race. But, I always try to say if you're playing any sort of a horizontal sequence to at least one race, you shouldn't have the favorite anywhere. And I think this is really that race for both of us.
Yeah, 70% of the time, one of the three races is, very few times do the three favorites ever win. So mathematically, it just works out that you got to have a race, and most tickets include all three favorites. That's where one of the races you got to throw out one of it. So as I'm saying, like you either throw out Rachel or you throw out Catherine, or you throw out Slumber or Big Blue Kitten. It's the ones that if you take both favorites in all three legs, all that does is add to the pot and the eventual win. So,
well, and just, plan it out. If you have a budget of $50 or whatever, it doesn't mean that you need to have so many horses in every leg that it totals $50. Instead, just stick with what you really like. Hey, take shots. And if it ends up being a small ticket, that's fine. Just play it multiple times. So people, I think, oftentimes too with budgets, they try to be like, okay, well, I have $45. We'll come up with a $45 play. If your strong opinions add up to $12, then play it a bunch of times. Don't feel confined to making your play equal what your budget is, straight out.
Well, I do, again, I chocolate candy, make sure we'll get a good pace. And like I say, Grand Tito's a solid horse and Tourists can run up on the pace. Again, I expect an evenly fair run race for everybody and full field. And I wouldn't be surprised if we have, 5-6 horses with a chance to win it. So it really, I mean, granted, a lot of people say they want competitive races, but I think all of us would rather cash tickets too. So this is one of those races where I think you get the best of both worlds. You can have Bolo at 10-1, you can have Tours at 7-1, you can have Slumber at 5-1, and you can be rooting for all three of them. And if you get the luck of the bounce, you can maybe still be alive after this race.
Well, it makes this entire sequence so much more interesting because I felt like the last several years in a row, this race in particular has been the one which hasn't necessarily been a compelling one. So it's really nice to have a big field, plenty of options in here. It really makes this whole sequence as a whole a lot more interesting to bet.
and dry weather in the forecast for both days. So we don't have to worry about who likes the yielding and who likes the firm and all of that type of variables. So that should be interesting. And especially when you're making a 2-day wager. I mean, a lot of times you sit there on Friday wondering if it's going to rain on Saturday. And then remember that one year they scratched horses. So then, yeah, it can just be a nightmare mathematically too, because all of a sudden they start scratching horses and then you get consolation payoffs. And
Oh, yeah.
yeah, it just can really kind of wreak havoc. The Kentucky Derby, little race they've been holding for well over 100 years, $2 million purse. You may have heard of it.
I've heard of it.
All right. Same thing here as with the Oaks. I mean, I don't know. I've been following it for 20 years, and we literally have not had an injury on the entire trail. I don't even count Cupid as an injury because I don't think he was going to go after that race anyways. So literally we went like 4 months without an injury, which seems almost mathematically impossible.
Yeah, it is. But I mean, it's good to see because I like to see all these horses show up. And I think that, you get more true prices that way because then people are betting who's won preps. Whereas when you get some of these heavy favorites who don't make it, like in the last couple of years, we had horses like Cairo Prince who didn't make it and Constitution who didn't make it, and it kind of gets screwy with the prices in the future. But this year is pretty true to form, and I don't know. I'm going to try to get away with 3 in here to close out my play. My top choice in here is Dancing Candy. It's probably not a surprise to anybody who follows me on Twitter. I think post 20 is perfect for this horse. He pretty much always breaks about half a step slow. So by virtue of being on the outside, it's just not as demanding on him as far as clearing and getting out front. Whereas had he drawn, I would say anywhere from post 7 or 8 inward, he would probably be in big trouble because if you remember in the Derby on the inside, you come up and that fence kind of protrudes out and everybody shifts over. So when you're drawn inside, you have to deal with that. So if you're breaking slow, that can be really tricky, and he could very easily have gotten shut off over there. So I'm very glad he drew 20. I think that is perfect for him, and I don't think it put so much pressure on him as far as having to be sent as well either. I don't expect him to be sent like he was in his last race. I think you can be much more patient with him. It's a long run up to the first turn, and his natural speed will carry him to the front, is I guess what I'm saying. He's not going to have to be vigorously ridden to get up there. There just really isn't that much speed. And I'd say even less so now that Connections of Outwork have basically flat out said that they're going to rate him. So I don't see that anybody's going to go with Dancing Candy, to be honest. I don't think that anyone takes him seriously. I think that they don't think he has a shot, and they're perfectly content letting him lead them up. And I don't know, for me, pace always comes first. So if you're going to give me a horse with legitimate, front end speed, that's going to be alone on the lead, then I'm always going to bet that, pretty much. I mean, even in a race like this, Dancing Candy might be cut below. Dancing Candy might not stay 10 furlongs. We'll find out. But if everyone's content to let him go on with things, then I will gladly take him in this race. So he's my top choice in here. The other 2 on my pick 3 I will use is Nyquist. I think of the 3 races in the sequence that of the favorites, he is your most likely winner of them. So I'm going to use him and try to toss the favorites in the other 2 races as we discussed. And then the last horse I'll use in here is Brody's Cause. Again, he's drawn wide, but he just drops out the back, no problem. And I'm surprised I'm using him. I didn't expect to use him just because of how I think the pace is probably going to shake out in here. But I will say, of all the horses training up to this race in videos that we've been able to see of the workouts and he's the one who stood out to me. I thought he's looked absolutely fantastic. So I feel like I have to use him in here in my pick 3. But top choice is Dancing Candy.
A couple of things. A couple of things with Dancing Candy, which I found it kind of interesting in your analysis, is I don't think anybody can run with them. I mean, I just think people understand how fast this horse is. So when you said, I don't think anybody's going to go with him, I don't think they can go with him. I mean, that's like me saying, I'm going to box a couple of rounds with Muhammad Ali. No, I'm not. I mean, I don't think anybody can run a 46. I mean, if they absolutely wanted to go suicidal, they could. But I mean, this horse is legitimately fast. So like I say, I have no idea if he's a grade 1 horse and whether he can get 10 furlongs. But that's not the point. I don't think anybody can go with him.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't think that's an option. I mean, all these other guys, they can say, you know, people are talking about if Leoban draws, and I mean, my God, Leoban is a clown compared to what Dancing Candy can do. I think the outside draw helps him, not so much because of the where he can place himself and all that stuff. I just think, you know, again, remember they load him in 2 at a time. He's going to be one of the last to load, and we both know he's had.
He has an attitude.
He has an attitude at the gate, so he won't have to be sitting there. He'll literally just load up and let him rip.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, Mike Smith has ridden in this race 13 times, so he's definitely in play. He's one of my top 3 contenders. He's not my top pick. I do think, you know, a lot of people are lamenting. What we have here is, you know, the perceive that Nyquist is better than everybody else, and then you have this big group of 10 horses. I think there's actually 3 horses that, if any one of these 3 win this race, their perception after the race would be a lot changed. One is Nyquist. I mean, if he wins the race, he's 8 for 8. Slam dunk. Gun Runner is 4 for 5. If he wins this race, he's 5 for 6. But you can't. I mean, he lost in the slop, and he had the lead down the street. Everybody knows he was primed for that day at the Jockey Gold Cup. He was bet down. He wasn't favored, but he was on everybody's picks that day. He just got tired, but he still had the lead halfway down the stretch. That's what I want. I want a horse that can fire. So he fired that day. And like I said, if he wins this race, he's 5 for 6 with it. I mean, you can't fault that. Mohe Men's another one. I mean, he lost the last time, but it doesn't matter. If he wins this race, he'd be 6 for 7, and nobody will care about the Florida Derby and the big picture. So I think those 3 are the 3 that immediately move to the head of the class if they win. Otherwise, the rest, you just got a wide open bunch that are very competitive, and there's a group of 7 or 8 horses. So my top 3 picks in order, I'm still going with Mohe Men. I think this horse is very good. One of the things, I think I did a deep dive into the fractions of the Florida Derby. There's only one horse that ran 2 sub-24 quarters. As a track guy, I fully appreciate running. It's not how you run sometimes, it's when you run it. He ran a 23.3 second quarter, going 1 mile and 1/8. That is the most inefficient way. You ask any horse to run a 23.3 and going from the 2 furlong pull. And the reason why he had to do that was because he was wide. So what I've started to figure out in the track is stats, it's bullshit on the whole. They ran 54 extra feet, but he was running a 23.3 to stay even while running 4 wide. He wasn't actually running any more feet. That's just because they don't stagger the starts in horse racing. So he ran a 23.3, then he ran a 23.4, and the peak speed in the whole race was his 42 miles an hour. To me, he's going to time that a little bit. Well, I just think if he times it a little bit better, he ain't going to lose by 8 lengths. So I'm going with Mohe Men. I just think those other 5 races can't be ignored. I like Gun Runner, and I like Whitmore. So I think Whitmore is being typecast of all those closers. Whitmore is the only one with 2 sprint wins. And you got to remember, again, the past performances are misleading. In the Southwest Stakes, first off, some breaking news is never going to run that race again. I mean, every time you watch that race, it's literally what he did that day was unreal. Like, he's never going to run that race again. I don't know. People will be chasing him forever, but he's never – I mean, I'm not saying he can't even win this race. He's not going to run – I mean, he literally ran from 14th place on the turn to winning by 2 lengths. Well, in between calls, Whitmore had the lead. And – so he got beat by a horse that'll never run that race again. Then he got beat by Cupid, who dug in on him. What are the chances of that? Like, people are acting like he's a hanger. Like, he just happened to face 2 goofy pace scenarios, and then he got beat on the square by Creator the last time. But whatever. He's going to be in the hunt. I mean, on the turn, I think he's going to get first round the closers. And yeah, he's just like anybody else. I don't think any one of these horses wants 10 furlongs, but I guess I'd rather have him at 25 to 1. Dancing Candy will be on my ticket just because I have to have the speed. And I still say he's the most talented horse in this crop. And I think he ran the most demanding prep race. His speed figure in the San Felipe was off the chart. So 45 and change the last time. He had no shot to win that race. I'm still actually more impressed that he only actually lost to More Spirit by 5 lengths after setting an insane pace of 150. So I'm using Gun Runner, I'm using Mohe Men, and then, you know, I like Whitmore and I like Dancing Candy, and Nyquist, it is what it is. I mean, I think he's, again, Dancing Candy may not win the race, but I'm counting on him to make Nyquist lose the race, because I don't think Nyquist has ever faced a horse like this.
Yeah, he probably hasn't. But I guess for me, the thing is that if Dancing Candy doesn't win, at the very least, I think he gives you a true pace scenario and stretches this field out to the extent that it actually could favor horses who are kind of that first flight right behind him, which is why I'm, pretty much opposed to most of the closures in here, aside from Brody, and that's only because Brody has looked that outstanding to me training. Like I said, pace scenario, he doesn't completely fit for me, but he's coming off the win, and he does look so good that I have to use him a little bit defensively in spots. But I mean, a lot of the closers in here to me aren't viable. I mean, you like Whitmore, and I think of the closers, he is one who, if you like them, I would consider. And the way he shapes actually fits for a race like this. But I mean, someone like Sudden Breaking News, I don't get it. I mean, I don't know. We'll see what happens with him. But to me, Sudden Breaking News just reeks of a horse who's going to be, I think he's going to be great. I think he's going to be a great turf miler. I mean, he has that just extremely sharp turn of foot, which fits in turf races. But the problem you get with a horse like that here in the Derby, you're going 10 furlongs, large field, is that you have to sit and wait, and he has to be produced so late because he doesn't have an extended turn of foot. It's a very, very sharp one, that he's going to have too much to do. I mean, he'll be flying. Sudden Breaking News will be that horse we've always seen of him, that people are like, wow, he was so close. He was flying late. I'm going to play him in the Belmont, which is a whole different story in and of its own. But I think Sudden Breaking News is going to be a very, very nice turf miler. He has easily the best turn of foot in this field, but it's a very sharp, short one. It's not one of a horse that you can let him go at the 3/4 pole and he's gonna keep that sustained rally all the way to the finish. He's just not that kind of horse. So I wouldn't use him for that reason. And I don't understand the shadow roll with him either. Typically shadow rolls are used for horses who have a very high head carriage and to get their head down, and he doesn't have that. So I don't know. I think that's been a little bit overplayed with him as well. I wonder what you think as far as horses who you think might get a lot of the play in a pick 3 in this race, because I do think Sudden Breaking News will be one of them. I think, a horse like Exaggerator, a horse like Creator, Shagaf. I think some of those will get placed in the pick 3s. What do you think?
I don't think Shagaf will get played at all. I do think Creator and Exaggerator everybody will have them on all the tickets because they both come off wins. People like horses that win. So I think those horses will be used on all pick 3s. I have a feeling just Destin will probably.
Yeah, I was going to say, what do you think of Destin?
I like Destin. I mean, I just like him as a horse because Creative Cause is probably one of my favorite horses of the last 10, 12 years. But God, I can't play a horse off an 8-week layoff with no long prep. And I mean, I actually kind of like his workouts. I know he's been getting heated up, but I actually like that workout he had with Stradivari. Nobody really talked about it, and I was like,
those two were going at it with each other.
They were going at it. I actually thought if you'd have told me they were working out together, I'd have said, well, Stradivari's going to kick his ass. And actually, Destin held his own. And if you notice, they actually went after each other a little bit. That was a competitive.
Destin was he was being a little bit of a bully to Stradivari, but I like that going into a big field. He's not going to let anybody shove him around.
Yeah, no. So, I mean, I kind of taken him out of consideration, but after that workout, I kind of thought, well, maybe I should just go with this guy because it'll be, I like the breeding and I've always I've won money on him both times. He wasn't my top pick in either one of those 2 races, but both times I threw out the favorite, so both times I made money because he was like that second choice that I had to have on every ticket, and I kind of just made money on him. I do like Gunrunner. Gunrunner's a nice horse. I mean, and I think he's going to work out the trip. I'm having him on every ticket. But I don't think he's going to be overplayed. I think he'll just kind of be what he is. I think my man Sam, your boy, is going to get overplayed a little bit.
Yes.
I guess to me it doesn't really matter because I'm going to be out in Vegas, and my whole weekend is going to be playing prop bets against Exaggerator. That sloppy win was the most ridiculous farce, and people have scanned me a couple of things out there right now, and if I'm right, I'm going to be making money. Trust me.
What about against More Spirit? Can we?
I haven't seen that one.
Double down.
A couple of horses that are literally 8 or 9 to 5, and all they have to do is beat Exaggerator, and I will beat that very heavy. Because people don't understand that last race. I'm not saying they got 16 lengths behind. They got 16 lengths behind in a 6-horse field, and he rode the rail. Yeah. I mean, in the mud with a 45 flat fraction. Now you get a moderate pace. He's facing 8 other closers. He won't look like such a, and he still came home the last time in a slower than a 52. Like I of all literally, like he's right there with the Japan horse and Oscar nominated with tosses. I mean, I'm not saying he ain't going to run 5th or 6th, but I don't think he has. I mean, that's my problem with him is I just don't think he's going to win. So for doubles and pick 3s and anything else, I just exaggerator. I can't see this horse winning this race.
Then all of his best races have come over wet tracks. Why aren't people putting that together? I mean, literally, Breeders' Free Charity, he was second to Brody's Cause. That was over a wet track, and he actually was the winner for a good portion of that race. Just got swooped up late. He won his Delta Jackpot over a wet track. Now he wins this race over a wet track. I mean, clearly, I think to me, it's no question that he improves lengths upon lengths upon lengths when he gets a wet track.
So yeah, I think, if anybody, sudden breaking news, I mean, I'm not playing him, but I can't really fault you if you want to play him. Creator's a nice horse. Mo Tom, the one thing I noticed about watching all of his races, he's never stopped running in any race, which is very rare. Like, he's not my top pick. He's not in my top 4. I won't really have him on my tickets, but I think he's a gritty little horse.
He's just crazy though. Like,
yeah.
I mean, people are only now really seeing what he's about, and they're all blaming Lannery for it. But, like there was a few people who posted his debut race from Ellis Park on Twitter. And then, oh, he got into trouble 10 seconds into that race with a different jockey aboard. Like, literally every race this horse runs in, he finds trouble all by himself. Nobody else does it. So, I mean, that's just... I can't handle a horse like that in the Derby. All I hope is that my picks in here are far, far away from Mocham.
Yeah, no, I kind of, I do, like I say, I like Shagaff as a horse. I think he could be a nice horse this summer. So if he ran in the top 6, that wouldn't surprise me. More superior. Like there's, I like Majesto. Like, he's like the Arnold Schwarzenegger of this field. I mean, there is not a better looking horse than Majesto, just size and long neck, and I like that guy, but do I really think he's going to win? No, but I got $10,000 on futures of him if he does, but from last November, because he ran in that race with Destin, and I bet both him and Destin. Problem is Destin was hammered down to 60 to 1 after the win, and he was 300 to win after the loss. So if Majesto wins, I've got 10 grand. So yeah, there we go.
I think people too, like, I think for me, one I would say, since you're saying a lot that you like, one I would say for sure I don't like, and I don't know, people seem to like Lonnie, and I don't know, I don't get it completely. I don't know if it's because he's Tappet, so people are like, well, he's from overseas, but he's kind of American, or if it's because he does have very stout stamina breeding underneath. His damn Heavenly Romance won a couple, 12 furlong races, so there's quite the stamina underneath, but I couldn't have him in the Derby at all. I don't like. I loved him for the UA Derby, but I don't think that UA Derby was strong by any means. And I expect him to be kind of outpaced in a race like this with Dancing Kenny, who's so quick. So I couldn't have him. I would say Lonnie though is one that, should they push forward, which I expect them to the Belmont after this race, then I'd consider him a little bit more, just because you get a much slower pace in there, and he can be able to sit far closer, and he does have very stout stamina breeding, but he's not a Derby horse to me. It takes a certain kind of horse, especially like mentally, to really handle themselves and process themselves in a Derby, and he doesn't strike me as one of those. He's your typical Tappet, that's for sure, but for some reason people have been gravitating towards him, even though he's 30 to 1, and I don't know. I would say, I guess I'd sum it up by saying I didn't like Move to Hege at all in this race, and I would say Move to Hege came in here with far superior credentials than Lonnie. So,
yeah, it's interesting. Another thing is I think the pace is getting really, now everybody's like, well, is it going to be a pace? Is it not going to be a pace? That's part of the beauty of this year's trail, is that we had 7 prep races that were running slop. And then we had 4 final preps that had extreme paces.
Yes.
So you've got 10 horses who are in here by virtue of pace collapses. And all the horses who made the paces collapse, none of them are in here.
No, and
And
it's
I just
not
think,
even just off the pace horses. It's like you're saying these are horses who are out the back, got full blown meltdowns.
yeah. So I just think I like Dancing Candy, and I just think, if he somehow wires this race, everybody will just blow it off. And no, this horse had the most dominating prep win of all, and you can't run a 45 going a mile and eighth in the slop. I mean, he was a
Yeah.
runoff that day. I
Well,
don't
and
know
I almost
why.
don't mind. I almost don't mind that he had that race because, Connection said, this is our plan, this is what we're going to do. And I think they learned the hard way that this is a horse that you cannot stoke him up out of the gate. You have to let him do his own thing. That's something Mike Smith even said before the San Diego Derby, is that this is a horse that when you let him do his own thing, he relaxes, he's fine. But it's, the second you try to, really ride him out of the gate, or if you try to, hold him up out of the gate, he's going to get upset, and that twirling candy blood is going to show in that sense of his, his nature, his attitude. So I'm kind of glad they had that race, because I feel like they learned, okay, that didn't work. We're not going to do that. And from post 20, I don't think you have to do that. He'll make his way to the lead. It might not be till the quarter pole, but I don't think you're under nearly the same pressure to get him out front as you are if he drew 5. And that for a horse like him, who really can have a tendency to over race when he is quote unquote sent, I think it makes a world of a difference.
Yeah, and I do, like I say, I think this horse is not cheap speed. This isn't no toes on ice here. So anybody who tries to head this horse before he's done, you're going to lose. I'll tell you that right now. Anybody thinks they're going to come and just walk up onto this horse on his outside flank and just walk right on by him, got a whole nother thing coming. And that's why I agree with you. I think a lot of it's not that they don't respect him. I think the smart guys do respect this guy. And they're like, we don't want no part of this black beast here. So I think he's the key to the whole race to me. He is the only horse that's capable of making Nyquist lose. And I'm hoping he does his thing. And yet I think it's on him to win in place, because I think he's legit. But like I say, I'm still going with Mohe Man. I think he's a lot better in that last race. And I think Gun Runner is better than people think. And I think Whitmore is the bomb that I want, just because he's got the 6 furlong win and the 6.5 furlong win. He's actually got more speed than Creator and Sudden Breaking News and some of these other guys. And there's just 2-3 horses. Like you say, you can make a case for 7. One of the few years that I legitimately can make the case for 7 or 8 horses. And yeah, it's a refreshing change, but I think people have to realize a lot of these horses are in the race on conditions that we won't see Saturday. There's no rain in the forecast.
Yeah.
And we're not going to see a 156 pace rating like Santa Anita Derby was, or a 148 like the Bluegrass was, or a 148 by time form that the Wood Memorial was. So I think you're going to see about a 130, which is average. And then, I think just off the pace horses, and the pace horses will be the horses to be feared.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing again, that, like I said, it's an overlooked subtlety of this race, is that Dancing Candy, supposing he hits the front, which he should pretty much under any circumstances, he has that legitimate steady speed that he'll get this field stretched out to an extent. And the thing to keep in mind with that, I think, is that it favors forwardly placed horses. I mean, it sounds silly almost to say, because people are used to, well, more speed equals look to the closers, but those really steady sectionals almost always favor forwardly placed horses. It's extremely difficult for a closer to close into those types of fractions. It was something we talked about last year with American Pharoah, is that he carved out these very steadily run races. You'd look at the fractions and it would be 23, 23, 23, 23, and it's almost impossible for closers to close into that sort of a scenario. So like I said, if you're, looking at this race, I do think that even if you look and say, well, Dancing Candy isn't slow, and he's not, but he runs his races in such a steady fashion that it really does favor kind of, aside from him, some of these really, you see the trackers, the horses who will be forwardly placed, versus a deep closer who might be goaded into having to make their move much earlier than usual. One we didn't talk about in here, and I don't like him, and I haven't liked him all along, is More Spirit. And, somehow I feel like his last 2 races, when he's lost both of them, he's gained more respect than he had after he won the Robert Lewis, which I really don't understand. He wasn't competitive for the win in either of his last 2 races.
Yeah, I mean, to me, he just seems like the ultimate place horse here. Like, he's not enough to make a quick move into the front. He's got more speed than the close, so he'll probably say, I kind of think he's going to run an okay race, but I can making a move. I think somebody can move. I mean, whether or not even like I say, I'm more him in because I think he's capable of making a move. He went from 4th to 1st. Granted, he swatted him away by 8 lengths, but that's not the point. The point is he ran his race to get. He at least made a move in that race. You know, a gun runner is going to make a move in the race. Some of these guys are going to make a move. I guess I'd rather have those horses than just a steady grinding. Because I think a horse like Creator can outfinish a horse like More Spirit.
Oh, no, absolutely. And I think that's, I mean, More Spirit to me, like I say, he's just kind of a grinder, kind of a plottery type. I think he's going to be difficult to even win with going forward because I just think that he's one that he needs everything to fall his own way to win some of these races. And just more often than not, that's not going to happen. So
he could be a Belmont type horse. I could totally see, his grinding style could play. I mean, we saw
because he can sit forward.
Yeah, he's like Commissioner and those other horses, those grinders on, near the front end, and so I mean, maybe that's a race that fits him better. So it will be, I think, after the race, because right now there's no weather concerns. Everybody seems to be training well. I think after the race, if Nyquist wins, I think he'll just be anointed the best horse. And then I think pace will be talked out a lot because I think a lot of people are misjudging all these closers and they're just expecting that those closers all are going to fire. I mean, I just, how many races do you see a race with 10 closers fire? Like, there's just aren't going to fire. I mean, and
some of them can't because you still have horses in front of them, so it's not like they're not going to have. Some of them are going to have trip troubles. That's just the way it goes when you come from that far back.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised. All these horses, not only are they closers, all of them swung wide. Brody's Cause swung wide.
Somebody's going to be 12 wide coming around the turn.
Somebody goes to the rail, they could win it. If the closer does win it, I think it's going to be the jockey that has to go to the rail.
Yeah, because otherwise you're going to be just trapped. And like I said, it's going to be a very tactical race for these horses out the back. They're going to really be jostling for position. And to be honest, this is a race that it wouldn't shock me if Dancing Candy's on the lead by himself and he's going steadily, but they aren't going super fast, moderate tempo. This is the kind of race it actually would not shock me in the slightest that one of these closers, just pinged off for, an early move, that they just go. Yeah. Because they're going to know there's 9 of them back there. You don't want to be stuck the one going 8 wide. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if, heading, the 3/4 pole, one of these horses doesn't just go from the back.
Yeah, maybe. And, like I say in the past, sometimes a horse has to change a style in this race, even if you don't expect it. So maybe, and I could see one of those closers winning then if they change their style. I just don't know if any of them can. Some of these just have no gate speed in the slightest. Yeah. Brody might actually be able to because he actually has a little bit of class, and at least he's been training well. So, I mean, I guess, I still wanted to, some of these horses, like my man Sam, I just think he was all out to get second the last time to make the race. He's a nice horse, but it is what it is. Well, and you have to know it wasn't the plan, right? So there's a difference between a Brody's Cause or a Nyquist that they pretty much knew. If nothing goes wrong, they're in the Derby, right? That's a big different story from a horse like my man Sam, who was a little bit of a surprise, had good form, supplemented, and made the race. But like you knew in January, this wasn't necessarily the plan. It was more of a dream. Yeah, it was just the dream to get there. Yeah, so I kind of agree with that. And like I say, Destin is kind of a wild card to me just because I think a lot of people, nobody's really talked about that Stradivari workout. And I watched that thing multiple times. I got Stradivari, and on the turn he came in on him, and then Stradivari was going to go outside him, and then he came inside, and then as soon as he got even with them, and then the jockey pulled him up because they didn't want him to win. But I'm like, that was a good little battle between those two. And I think Stradivari sitting and waiting for that Preakness is going to be a handful. So that's going to line up that race pretty solid. And, whether Nyquist wins this or not, I think Stradivari is going to be a handful in that Preakness, and Collected and some of these other guys. I mean, we're almost the opposite. The Preakness is already lining up. You've got some speed horses again. So that's where those closers, but one of them better go into the Preakness, because now you've got 3, 4, potentially you might have 3, 4 speed horses.
Mm-hmm. No,
So,
exactly.
So, yeah, I mean, I just think that you can't, the way some of these horses made the race was because of the pace collapses. Well, then when you get a full field, when half the field is plotters, you can't get mad if there's no pace, because all those horses were casualties getting here. And then, like I say, half these horses, there's 7 preps in the slop. The only one who never ran in the slop, amazingly, was Nyquist. And guess what? He's the only one that's never lost. It's almost like, kind of validates why some of these trainers don't like to run in the slop, because Nyquist has managed to avoid it all the way through, and he's the only one that's undefeated.
Yeah, I mean, if you have a horse who maybe doesn't like that sort of a situation, ends up being positive, and you just end up, even if you're a really good horse, just too many times that in these slop races you end up running into just a freak, a Greenpoint Crusader or somebody who just absolutely freaks over the surface. And that's where some of the losses come, and that's where some of the blowouts come. I mean, that's why, so often you and I talk about here about, these slop wins, you really have to take them with a grain of salt, because, just even in general, you see much wider margins of victory, which, says a lot about the races to begin with.
Yeah, you start to see those big margin of victories, and people start to misjudge the talent a little bit. Well, so it seems like we've covered all 3 races. My top pick is going to be Mohe Men. Yours is going with who are you on top again?
Dancing Candy. Should we give our pick 3s again, just in case anyone popped in the lead?
All right.
Okay, my Oaks Woodford Reserve Derby pick 3. In the Oaks, I like the number 5, Dream Dance, with the number 10, Venus Valentine, 12, Catherine Sophia, and 13, Landover Sea. In the Woodford Reserve Turf Classic, I like Bolo, that's number 3, 5, Reporting Star, 11, World Approval, and 13, Kasaki. And then in the Derby, I'll be using 3 of them. That is Brody's Cause, Dancing Candy, and Nyquist. So 13, 19, 20.
Yeah, and my Oaks Derby Woodford pick 3, I'm going to start out with 4 horses. I'm going to use Rachel's Valentina a little bit, and then I'm going to use Taxable, Royal Obsession, and Terra Promessa. Then I'm going to come back with 5 in the turf race, including Divisadero, Triple Threat, Tourist, and Reporting Star and Bolo. And then in the Derby, I'm really just going to go with the 3, Mohe Men, Gunrunner, and Whitmore. So just kind of go less in the Derby and kind of just see if I'm alive and see where everything shakes out.
Absolutely. Hopefully one of us cashes.
Well, like I say, we finally got all 3 races that are pretty competitive. I mean, even if he's like Nyquist, he's still going to be 7-2, and I don't think people have the respect for him like American Pharoah and California Chrome. It's just a different type of field complexion. But this turf race is wide open this year, legitimately, and the Oaks is legitimately 4, 5, 6 horses that can win that.
Absolutely. I mean, I think I'm excited about this sequence this year, because I do feel like it really is the most compelling one we've had in a long time. We've had a few that it was just like, oh, rough to get any sort of a payout. But this one this year looks, even if Nyquist wins, this one looks like it's one that you can get paid, especially in that, Woodford Reserve leg.
Sounds great. Full day. It's again expected to be nice weather both days and should be fast and firm. And good luck to everybody. That's going to do it for another edition of Down to the Wire.